And everyone is like that. Everyone has a public persona, the side that you see when you first meet them. And in a lot of cases, it's a mask, right? A lot of us are being on when we come into relationships. But if you make it past that mask and you get to stair step your way into relationship with them, what will you find? You'll find their messy side. You'll find their sin, you'll find their brokenness, but you'll also find things that are beautiful about them and things that you would have missed if you didn't notice and you didn't give the chance to go a little bit deeper. We are all guilty sometimes of judging books by their covers and making assumptions about people based on what we see on the outside. Sometimes we do not know how to go deeper or how to move past those assumptions. So that's going to be our focus today, learning some skill sets that help us get past our assumptions and get past other people's masks so that we can get to know them more deeply. So, point number 4, it's 4 because we did 3 last time, even though it's 1 of today. Emotionally intelligent relationships require active movement towards others. So we're going to look at understanding empathy, a big piece of the relationship puzzle, and how to improve our social skills. And I'm calling those the actions by which we assemble the puzzle. Okay. We all know relationships, like my relationship with Brian, are developed by degrees over time. So as we look at these, we're going to go through 3 different, like, general levels of connection to kind of help understand where they're going to fit in. The first one is I'm getting to know you. And then we're going to say, all right, we're moving closer. And then we're going to go to, I'm sorry, I'm just meeting you. I'm getting to know you. And then we're moving closer. So kind of 3 different relational stages. So I'm just meeting you. Let's think of that as like our initial entry level interactions. This is where you're just learning someone's name, some basic information about them. Maybe you've only had brief interactions. I'm getting to know you. We're going to think of as like middle stages of a relationship. We're learning a little bit more about each other. We're starting to build trust. And then we're moving closer is going to be the stage where now there's like enough trust that we can start to share deeper information, maybe a little bit about our feelings, maybe some things that are a little bit more personal. So we're letting each other in more. Maybe we've even moved from calling ourselves acquaintances to saying that we're friends at that level. So that's going to be real fluid and organic in a normal relationship, but just for us to have a scaffolding. And my caveat for you, just like last time, is that a lot of these concepts we could do an entire talk on all by themselves. And so I'll just be spending a brief time on them. But if they apply to you and you say, all right, I want a little bit more information about that, we will have a Q&A again at the end. So save some of your questions or things that you want to know a little bit more about. And then also when you leave today, I am sending you with a resource list. So if you want to know even more about one topic or another, you'll have some direction to get started on that. So, ready? Let's dive in. All right. So, what is empathy? Empathy, by dictionary definition, is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. It's often confused with sympathy. They're kind of like brothers, right? Sympathy is the ability to feel compassion or concern for what another person is going through. But empathy goes deeper than that and says, I want to really try to feel what they're feeling. So a lot of times we think of empathy as being only appropriate for like a later stage of relationship. The Bible says, weep with those who weep, rejoice with those who rejoice, bear one another's burdens, right? So we think, well, it requires me to know you pretty well before I can do that. And that's where empathy belongs. Not necessarily true, right? When we're talking about emotional intelligence, all those things are, of course, a part of it, but empathy is important from the very beginning, the very first meeting in a relationship. And at that level, it's more like perspective taking. I don't really know you yet, but I'm doing my very best to put myself in your shoes and imagine what you might be feeling or what it might be like to be you so I can relate to you more compassionately and more wisely, right? The empathy is essentially the ability to consider what could be underneath the mask that I know that you're wearing, right? And then social skills are just the boots on the ground actions or tools we use to accomplish our goal of connecting with others. So Our first point here in empathy is to consider the situation that you're in. Imagine the first time that you walked into this church, right? You may or may not have known anyone. You might have felt nervous about whether you're dressed appropriately. I don't really know how they dress at this church. Maybe where should I park? How do I get into the entrance here? Coming around on Randall Road, right? Where are the bathrooms? All those things, right? Oh, yeah, okay. So, yeah, but those are things, right? For a visitor, you don't know the first time you come. Now that you're used to it, you don't think about this place the same way, right? Because now you know where everything is and you feel comfortable here. And everybody's going to have a different personality. And that is going to affect what they feel when they come into a new situation. Some people, when they visit a church, they feel super excited and, oh, we're going to check out this new place. Some people feel nervous. They don't want to be seen. They don't want to be noticed, right? Or think about couples who argue all the way to church. And what's the headspace that they have when they come in, right? Everybody is coming in a little bit differently. So it's helpful to imagine, what is it like for a visitor when they walk in our doors? To put those lenses on once again with empathy and say, what would it feel like to be this new person coming in? Or what would it feel like if you've been coming for a while, but you still haven't really made any connections and you still sort of feel on the outside, right? So considering the other person and what is their situation, step one to empathy. So I've got a couple of other examples on here outside the church walls, right? Thinking about being the new person at a gathering. So if you have a small group, if you have a social event, it feels weird to be the new person, right? At the bonfire example, some of the people knew each other and they were super comfortable. Others did not. They could have gone home that night and never come back, right? So really thinking, what does it feel like to be that person that feels on the outside? We've all been there before, but when we're not there, we don't always think of it. Crowded situations, being at places like the DMV or the airport, that can be really stressful for some people, right? So empathy is just the ability to remember that. Even though you may not be, you may be comfortable, other people are not necessarily. So considering the situation that we're in. Number two, pay attention to nonverbal cues. So we're going to do a little exercise here, all right? Our first person here is fidgety. When you are talking to someone and they're super fidgety while they're talking, what are some things that you might think about them? Just holler out if you have any ideas. What does fidgeting mean? Yeah, they could be nervous. What else? Absolutely. Distracted. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, uncomfortable. Maybe some other things might be, think about people who have ADHD or like anxiety, generalized anxiety in their body. Sometimes medications make people fidget and move a lot, right? So those are things to consider. What about someone who does not make eye contact with you? They look up at the ceiling or they look down or they're looking somewhere else. What are some things that could mean? Yes. Hmm. Yes, that can be a social cue. They want out of there. That's right. Yes. It can also be a sign of autism spectrum disorder, right? Not making eye contact. How about someone who talks incessantly and they go and go and go? They talk fast. They don't take pauses or they don't seem to understand appropriate social cueing back and forth. What could that mean? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yep. Hmm. Yeah. All of the above. Those are all great answers, right? Someone who talks incessantly. They could be arrogant and self centered. They could be anxious, right? They don't really, lack of social training. Again, thinking of ADHD and autism, neurodiversity, that sometimes people fall into those things. So, yeah, they're just things for us to be aware of, right? We don't always notice or think of those and what they mean or could mean in the context of a conversation. So, we want to learn to watch body language, pay attention to someone's tone of voice. All those things can cue you in to what their emotional state is. And so emotional intelligence says, what state are they in? I want to respond to them according to that state.